Hi, I'm Ian, and welcome to Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast that gives you the actual ghost story with the actual history in the actual place. On this episode, we're back heading downtown Victoria. We're going to be running into the stinky ghosts of the Churchill Hotel, finding out why they're there and what else is going on this episode of Ghosts and Bears. Well, thank you for coming back, bless your hearts. After seeing us on the video in the Halloween episode, I wasn't sure anybody would, but here you are, looking all attractive and thin. It's just stunning that you're here. We were really dreading that episode, actually. Well, I was, being on video, but you know what? Alex and Chris did such a fantastic job. They really made the whole thing pretty painless. We managed to get through it without a whole lot of edits. Alex was the one who put it all together at the end, and he really had the hard job, because he had to cut in different cameras, and there's a whole nother level when you start doing visual stuff. I had zero idea that it was that complicated. The other thing, once we finished that video, I was saying to Jay the next day, we were talking about it and how we thought it was going to turn out. We weren't really sure. And we were pretty excited, actually, when Alex sent over the first cut. We're like, whoa, this looks so good. We were really, really thrilled. But we realized we forgot a huge part of the story. Well, huge to us at the time. So I'm going to tell you now. So thanks for coming back, because now you get the whole story. We had recently purchased, back in the day, one of those Google Home devices with a camera. And one of the things you can do is you can set that sucker up to send you an alert if there is either movement or a face or human in the vicinity. We'd set it up in the kitchen facing forward, so it kind of faced into the refrigerator. Not very exciting, but I don't know. I guess we just figured that would be a good place to have it shooting to catch people in the fridge. I don't know. I honestly don't know what the thinking was. Anyway, it was set up so that it would send alerts to our phones if there was movement tracked on this camera. And we were over at our neighbor's house. She lives about 3 doors away from us, and we go over there and hang out and have a few drinks and good conversation. And we do that probably a couple times a month. She's amazing, always has chips. That's probably why we keep going back. We're a bit like raccoons that way. And we were over there. My phone went off, and I happened to have it face up on the table. And I look at it, and it says Google Alert, motion detected. And I was like, what? And I pick it up, and I look, and what it does is it sends you this alert, and then it's got a video clip attached. So the video clip was a bright light that seems to occur in front of the fridge. It stays there for a little bit, and then it slowly moved across out the closet, past the pantry door, out into the dining room. And I said to Jay, did you see that? And he picks up his phone and he looks at it. He's like, oh, that's not good. So we show our neighbor, and we show, the other people who are there, and they're all like, whoa, like, what is that? And we're like, we have no idea. That's really freaky. I don't think I want to know. So anyway, put the phone down, get back to talking. Everything's fine. All is well. And about half an hour later, another Google alert. Motion detected. And I'm like, oh no. So we pick it up, and this time it is a dark figure that moves from the dining room doorway, which is off to the left-hand side of the screen. And you can see this figure move out of the doorway and then move past the fireplace, and then is out of sight. And I looked at Jay, and I'm like, what is going on? We didn't have a cat at the time. There's no houses behind us. We back onto the woods. I really have no explanation for it. But I'll tell you what we did do. We turned off the detection system on the camera because we realized that neither of us really wanted to know what was happening. We were both much happier. Because keep in mind, at the time, we were dealing with all the weird things that were happening in the house. And so this was just one more thing going on that we couldn't explain and pretty sure was some sort of weird paranormal thing. So we just decided to turn it off and then we wouldn't have to worry about it. And we deleted the videos and everything. Like, we just like, nope, we're all good. Actually, I don't think we deleted them. I think Google holds them for like 3 months or something and then deletes them. And we didn't want anything to do with them. So they were gone. So that is the weird addition to our Halloween episode, that it wasn't just what we told you was going on, it was also that sort of thing was going on as well. So we still do have the Nest doorbell, and we still do have that camera thing in the kitchen, but it doesn't tell us anything unless someone touches the doorbell. Like if someone rings the doorbell, then I get a little alert, but otherwise, nope, don't want to know, and really don't care. Honestly, I just, no, I'm good. I don't know what it would do now. Oh, I do actually. That's not true. What it would get now is it would go off every probably half an hour if we weren't home to let me know that Randy, the devil cat, is roaming the counters, searching for anything he can eat. So that is actually what would happen now. And that's another good reason to not have it on, because that would just drive me nuts, because he's getting kind of porky, so we're going to have to do something about that. I'm going to have to buy diet cat food. Like, what kind of world do we live in? Anyway, so this is what Randy is been up to, terrorizing the counters, triggering the home sensors. So that's not so great. I am really relieved that Halloween is over. I have to not lie to you. It's a really grueling time for me. Usually I've got, I work full-time 8 to 4 Monday to Friday, and then I do ghost walks, and usually that's like one night, maybe 2 nights a week. I can handle that, but when we hit ghost walks, it's 4 or 5 nights a week, and it's pretty grueling, it's pretty intense, and it gets very tiring physically, just very tiring, because you're doing 2 walks a night. So I would work 8 to 4, come home, make dinner for everybody, and then I'm back out, and I'm downtown from 6:30 to about 10:30 every night. So, and not just like standing around, but like emoting, putting in a lot of energy into groups. And if you get a good group, it's amazing because they're giving that energy right back. But if you get a group of people who like don't really want to be there, or it's a work thing, it can be really, really draining. So I am so happy Halloween's over. A friend at work said to me, she goes, "Oh, you're kind of a seasonal celebrity," because the other thing we've added on this year, of course, is the release of the new book. October 5th, it came out, Vancouver's Most Haunted. And I've gotten some amazing press for that, and God bless Touchwood for putting that together, all the promotional stuff. But it's a lot of work too. You're doing a lot of interviews, you're talking to people you don't know, and you're just trying to answer their questions as best you can. There was a newspaper spread, I did a bunch of radio stuff, a lot of podcasts, which has been awesome, but it takes a lot out of you. So you add that into the usual Halloween stuff, and it is wipeout city. I mean, you are just done. So she said to me, she goes, "Oh, so," I said, "Yeah, when Halloween is over, no one wants to talk to me. It's awesome." And she said, "Oh, you're a seasonal celebrity." And I said, "Yeah, I'm like Santa, but with pumpkins, but still fat." So there's that. So, we just kind of go with what you got. So now that Halloween is over, I can focus more on the podcast, and we don't really have ghost walks November. We do sort of at Christmas time, but I don't really do those usually. So it's actually really nice to just be able to come down, focus on this, start work on the next book, Calgary's Most Haunted, and not be too concerned about ghost walks and having to rush downtown all the time. So that's good. Now, our story for this episode is going to be one of the ones we do downtown. It's another ghost walk tale, so I hope you enjoy those, because that's what you got. And this one is about, as I mentioned, the stinky ghost of the Churchill Hotel. Now, I'm sure not all the ghosts are stinky, but it's interesting because some ghosts do come with their own scent. Sometimes that's the only way you know they're around. I had a friend who used to say she always knew her grandmother was around because she would smell lilacs in the house, and she knew that was the perfume her grandmother always wore, and when she smelled that, she knew her grandmother was with her. In the same way, people will smell other scents. Wood shavings was one a friend of mine would always smell, and her grandfather was a big woodworker, and she always knew when he was around because she would smell pine, like pine shavings. So some ghosts just have a scent, and that's all you'll ever get from them. You won't get anything more tangible, noise or visual or anything. It's going to be a scent, and I think that's really interesting. These ghosts show up with scents, but they also show up in other ways too, which we will get into in our story time. But it really, because of course I can't get into all the history when we do the ghost walks, I'm able to give you some of the history of this particular building. So the building that's now known as the Bedford Regency Hotel has gone through a lot. It started out as just a simple 2-story building, and it was the home to the British colonist. Here's a politically incorrect name. That was the newspaper for Victoria in 1873. But the newspaper quickly grew, and it moved out of the property in 1898. A man named Mr. Hibben and his friend Mr. Bone, too easy, they purchased the 2-story building, and they wanted to open up a stationery and bookshop, and that's what they ran out of there for a while. However, in 1911, they started to get a little more aggressive in their marketing, I guess you could say. They engaged the services of Thomas Hooper, and Thomas Hooper is the haunted architect. That is what we call him on the Ghost Walks, because every building this man has seemed to touch has ghosts. I don't know what it is, but that's what's going on. That's certainly the case for the Rogers Chocolate Shop and quite a number of other buildings in downtown Victoria. Thomas Hooper is involved. So yeah, he's the haunted architect. They brought him in because they were going to add on 3 more stories to the building. They wanted to make it a 5-story building. The reason for this was in 1889, the Supreme Court of British Columbia had been built in Bastion Square. And there were lots of lawyers who wanted to be close to the courthouse. Of course they did. It makes perfect sense. So Mr. Hibben and Mr. Bone thought, hey, I bet we would be able to cash in on this. So 1911, they paid to have this building completely reworked, add on the 3 stories, and become an office building, which was quite a novel thing at the time. You didn't really have big multi-level office buildings, so this was unusual. But bless their hearts, things did not work out for the best because they had gotten their beautiful building all done. It was in the perfect place. How could they lose? And then history kind of turned on them. The First World War came along and was not kind to Victoria. Combine that with Prohibition, which was going along, and it effectively sank the city into a depression for quite a while. Between 1914 and 1921, First World War restrictions were put on most of the land, so coal and lumber barons packed up and headed to Vancouver. During Prohibition, a lot of the hotels around Bastion Square, and there were a number of them, couldn't afford to even stay open without their saloons. So many of them closed. A lot of them became tried to turn into office buildings as well. They just turned into storage places for furniture and shipments and things like that. It was really kind of sad. Anything coming in off the docks, they needed somewhere to put it. Well, I guess you can store it in my empty building because I got nothing else going on. It was actually quite a thing in Victoria. It really did make a huge mark on the city, and there was a good reason for it. Because of all this going on with the economic depression, people come to Victoria now, they come as tourists, and they're like, oh, you guys, you're so smart to preserve your old buildings, and we smile and nod. But really, the reason we have all these old buildings is because Victoria got into such a funk right the way through into the 60s and 70s and into the 80s, actually, that no one wanted to build anything else here. No one was going to invest money in the backwater that Victoria had become. It was quite pathetic. So while we get to, accept the applause and admiration of other people when they come here from other cities. It's not because we were smart. It's because no one wanted to build here. There was just no reason to knock the buildings down and build something bigger. There was just nothing going on. So yeah, that's the real story. So here we are as we've got these buildings. They came very, very close to being knocked down. Bastion Square is just this really dilapidated area. But for a while there, the Bedford Regency, as it's called now, it was known as the Bastion Inn, the Alhambra Hotel, and it's at its most infamous, as we discussed, the Churchill. The Churchill Hotel was open from the 1940s to the 1970s. And when the new courthouse opened up in 1963, quite a ways away up on Blanchard Street, that's when Bastion Square really went down the tubes. They were just going to knock down everything. The Churchill was a pretty disreputable destination in the 1960s. Especially, that was really at its height. It was well known for its beer parlor in the basement, which was nicknamed the Bucket of Blood. Yeah. And the biker clientele, the very friendly professional ladies, and by professional I don't mean they worked in offices, and of course the run-of-the-mill thugs and your basic barflies, your drunks. It was so bad that at one point one of the bikers drove his motorcycle. He got upset and he drove his motorcycle down the stairs into the bar from Government Street, as you do. I think maybe talking, but that's just me. We're gonna get the rest of the story that I tell on the Ghost Walk now, and when we come back, I'll have a bit more information for you and a few more little tidbits that are pulled from my book, Victoria's Most Haunted, and we will have some more discussion around that. So I hope you enjoy the story as we head off down into downtown Victoria and we hear the story of the Stinky ghosts of the Churchill Hotel. All right, so we're talking about this building right here behind me, the Bedford Regency Hotel. Now, all of these buildings on this street, everyone has a ghost story, but the Bedford Regency is by far the most haunted building on this block, and there's some good reasons for that. Back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, it was being used as the Churchill Hotel. That was what it was known as, and it was, no matter where you're from, I'm sure you can relate to this, the worst hotel in town. If you had to send your worst enemy somewhere, you wouldn't even send them here. It was that bad. In fact, it was so awful that if you wanted to have someone murdered or purchase something illegal, great place to start that conversation. On the very top floor, top right-hand room up there, there was a woman named Charlotte who lived there. She was also known as Lady Churchill, and her job was to entertain gentlemen for money in her room. I used that once when I had a bunch of kids in the group, and this little 4-year-old standing right here goes, "Dad, what did she do?" And the dad goes, "She told jokes." And the kid goes, "They must have been really funny." And I'm trying to tell the story and not laugh, right? But anyway. So that's Charlotte was up there. Charlotte was known for two things. One, she was very friendly, obviously. But the other thing was she would wear very heavy floral perfume, and not nice floral perfume, the kind you get at the finer gas stations, right? Like gallon jar kind of stuff. And she would douse herself in this floral perfume, and then she would head down into the basement of the hotel. And that's because there was a beer parlor down there nicknamed the Bucket of Blood. Right? Mother's Day material, I know. And the Bucket of Blood was a very rough bar. A very rough place to be. And you got there by going down a long, steep set of stairs off of Government Street. The doorway is still there. It's chained shut, but the doors are still there. And you would head down there, and that is where you could pretty much get whatever you wanted, illegal or not. It was all down there. And that's where Charlotte would go every day around 5 o'clock, reeking of floral scents. She would head down there to make some new friends, rustle up some business, that kind of thing. And Charlotte was, pretty well known in the community, and this was her job. This was her life. And she was just another fixture in the hotel. There's another person in our story tonight. His name was Brady. And Brady was new to town. He worked at the local radio station. He had a face for radio, apparently not an attractive man. And Brady would stop at the local cigar shop that's still there on Government Street. He would buy a cigar, and he would spend the rest of the night puffing and sucking on that thing, making an awful smell of cigar smoke down in the bucket of blood, where he would stay until, midnight, whatever, and then he'd slither off home. Well, Brady and Charlotte met. They hit it off. He became a frequent client, and then a heavily discounted client. And then by some miracle known only to the two of them, they became engaged, which is actually kind of sweet because it probably wasn't going to happen any other way. Now, they would often be seen around town making their big plans, which mostly consisted of moving to Vancouver where nobody knew them, so that they could have a normal life. This is what their plan was. But not everyone was thrilled that dear Charlotte was no longer community property. One man in particular was quite upset, and he decided he was going to teach Brady a lesson. He was only going to scare him. That's what he said at his trial, because this is not going to end well. And he spent a highly constructive afternoon getting blind drunk, waiting for Brady to show up at 5 o'clock after his job ended at the radio station. And he was down there getting drunker and drunker, waiting for Brady to come downstairs. And he saw Brady coming down the stairs. He smelled the cigar smoke. He knew who it was. And he waited until Brady stepped off the last step, and then he smashed a beer bottle on the edge of the bar, and he lunged to Brady's face. But he kind of missed, and he cut him across the carotid artery. I know, like Splash Zone at SeaWorld, right? He was just hemorrhaging blood everywhere. He grabbed his throat. He turned. He tried to go up the stairs to back up to Government Street, I guess to get some help. But he never even made it up the stairs. The newspaper at the time printed a very colorful quote when they said, "We all knew Brady was dead when that cigar he kept chomped firmly in his mouth rolled down the stairs and extinguished itself in a pool of his own blood." Christmas card material, am I right? So Brady's dead, but no one bothers to tell poor Charlotte. She comes down about an hour later looking for her fiancé, and they're like, "Oh, right. Yeah, he's dead." And that was the end of that. Charlotte didn't say a word. She turned her on her heel. She went back up to her room. And unbeknownst to most people, she had a pretty bad drug habit. And that night, she just OD'd and took herself out of the picture permanently. The hotel limped along for a few more years, but eventually it was just too depraved and gross to sustain itself, and it shut down. The 1980s came. There was a big reno. They changed it into the Bedford Regency. They did they did a lot of renos, but two in particular we're going to talk about. One, Charlotte's old bedroom. This seems needlessly and somewhat ironically cruel. They turned that into the bridal suites. I know. Always a bridesmaid. And what people will experience in there is they will walk into the room and almost directly walk across to the phone and call down to the front desk and say, "Why did the room attendants use so much floral room spray in here? It stinks." And the front desk says, "Give it a minute." And within a minute, 45 seconds to a minute, the smell's gone. The other thing people run into, they go into the bathroom in their room and they hear a woman singing in the room. But when they come out, there's no one there. Now, interesting for us was about 2 years ago, we were doing a tandem tour. So it'd be two guides on and we'd swap off stories. The other guide was leaning up against the wall, and these two women came from over there, and they said, excuse me, and they pointed at the hotel, and they said, "Are there ghost stories about our hotel?" Now, we've been doing this long enough to know you don't say yes or no. You say, "Why would you say that?" Because you want to get the story, right? Like, that's really what we're doing. They said, "Well, we're staying on the very top floor of the hotel, the second room from the end. We've been there for 3 nights. And every single night, multiple times, we have to call down to the front desk to complain about the woman in the end room who won't stop singing. And they keep telling us we're the only ones on the top floor." So good news for us, right? Bad news for them. But we knew exactly who that was. So it was kind of cool for us to get that story confirmed. Now downstairs, they decided not to put in another bucket of blood. Probably a good plan. What they did instead was turn that area into a staff room. The staff room was pretty basic, and nothing really happened down there. It is what it is. You go there and have your coffee break. Until one day, a gentleman came to the front desk and he said, "Hey, I used to work here. I'm wondering, can I go down into the basement? I'd love to see that room. That's where I used to work." And one of the room attendants passing said, "Yeah, come down, have a cup of coffee. You can tell us about the, good old days." And so he went down there. And they're down there having coffee. He's telling them some stories. And then everyone starts to smell cigar smoke, which is weird. No one had experienced that before. And then a man who looked as real as any of them began walking down the stairs, the long locked and chained shut stairs from Government Street, walking down the stairs. He looked so real. One of the women stood up and said, "Excuse me, sir, you can't be down here. This is no longer a public area." But he just kept walking. He stepped off the last step onto the floor and blinked off like a light bulb. He was just gone. He disappeared. Of course, everyone was freaked out, but it was the poor former employee. He was a bartender, and he said, "I know who that was because I was working the bar the night he got killed." Maybe that's why Brady came back. He recognized that man or whatever. When I was writing the ghost book, I learned a valuable lesson. You need to talk to two kinds of people when you're writing a ghost book: security guards and night janitors, because they are the ones in this building when everyone else is asleep. And the night janitor here, a guy named Andrew, he would work from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. And I got to interview him, and I asked him tons of questions, and he gave me all kinds of amazing stories. And then we were winding up, and I said to him, "So what was the freakiest thing that ever happened to you in here?" And he thought about it. He's super laid back. And he thought about it and he goes, "Well, one night I was in the basement. I was cleaning the men's bathroom. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I locked myself in so no one would bother me. And as I started cleaning the stall, I happened to look over at the sink. And as I did, the hot and cold taps turned on full blast by themselves." And I said, "What did you do then?" And he said, "I went and cleaned somewhere else for a while." I'd be looking for a new job, but that's just me. Now, speaking of lovely places, we're going into the alley this way. And welcome back from the dark and haunted streets of Victoria. I wanted to give you a little bit more because there is more to this story. Andrew was a huge help when I was writing this chapter. He was really, really knowledgeable, and he'd been there a while. He also said that he has seen fully formed apparitions floating into walls, which actually makes sense because this building has been remodeled so many times. And the number of ghost stories you hear, they're like, "Oh, it floated across the room and went through the wall." Well, to you, it's a wall. But to that ghost, there was a flipping doorway there less than 200 years ago. And this hotel, was really remodeled, like newspaper store newspaper building, and then a book and stationery store, and then an office building, and then turned into a hotel. Come on, there's going to be doors and all kinds of things that aren't normally there. Andrew was also in charge of cleaning the pub next door called the Garrick's Head, which is one of the oldest pubs in Western Canada. Now, the original owner of the Garrick's Head was a man named Michael Powers. And Michael was a bit of a character. He was murdered in 1899. He was coming home to the pub because he lived above it. And it was around 3 a.m. And he was hit from behind with a 5-pound sack of sand. And they know this because they found it where he was attacked. He was then knocked down and then just beaten without mercy. He was taken to the Royal Jubilee Hospital, and he died 4 days later from a ruptured liver. Though he did regain consciousness, he never named his attackers. Police records show that one of the people involved in the attack may have been a woman dressed as a man. Michael was a hard-living, hard-drinking kind of guy, and not the sort of man who kept his opinions to himself. Records show that he clashed with local prostitutes about meeting customers in his pub, and he very publicly disparaged a local woman who was a well-known beauty and whose husband was often out of town. I think we can see how the rumors might fly. This woman was not a prostitute, but she did work in a local hotel, and Michael had brought up her lack of fidelity more than once. It's doubtful we'll ever know who decided to take Michael's life, but we do know there was certainly no lack of suspects. He made as many enemies as he did friends, I think. Guests of the hotel and have reported strange happenings, but also just even when there's no one around. The glass of the old school fire extinguisher cabinet spontaneously shattered when no one was near it, and they caught that on a surveillance camera. Guests have also reported hearing running in the hallway so loudly and so often they open their doors to see what's going on. People have reported hearing voices singing or laughing and doors opening and closing on their own. All of the standard things you might expect or experience in a haunted location. Andrew, as I said, super great guy, really laid back. He accepts all this for what it is. He sometimes admits he gets a bit freaked out. Once he heard a voice of a child ask him his name and did he want to play. Luckily, Andrew's interested in ghostly things, so he's picked a great place to work. It's just a really interesting building and a lot going on. The maintenance men complain about things being moved or things not being where they left them. And it's just a really odd place. In the pub, incidentally, there's a booth where Andrew and other people actually have seen two people sitting in there talking. And sort of you walk in and you're like, oh, that's a great booth. And you walk up to it and you're like, oh, there's people there. And you kind of veer off to another place. You sit down and when you look back, there's actually nobody there. But Andrew has been mopping the floors, at 2-3 in the morning. And he said he had definitely heard voices and he would go and check. And there'd, of course, be no one there. Glasses clinking, children playing in the pub area, things like that. So it's a very interesting, heavy location, to say the least. And it certainly has its own pretty wild history, which, hey, part of Victoria. They all seem to have that going on. That is the story of the Bedford Regency. It's a good one. I definitely enjoy that one. It's probably one of my favorite ones to tell on the tour because it's just got so much to it. And we really only talked about 2 people who show up or who have shown up. So there's a whole lot more to that place than I will ever know, I'm sure. We have had a really good time doing the show. We are looking at some changes. We are not going anywhere. In fact, if anything, now that I've gotten the basics down of recording and distributing and all these things, I'm actually kind of excited to refine it a bit. So what I've done is I've talked to a few people who have been amazing supports to the show right from the beginning, even before we got our first episode out. And I've asked them very specifically, hey, what do you think we could do better? Or what would you like to see different? Either something you heard somewhere else or just whatever. What really makes a great show for you? What makes you happy? And what I got back was this great list of things. Not a lot. We're not going to change the format. We're always going to be the actual ghost story with the actual history and the actual place. That really is at the core of what this podcast is about and what I love about it. But I've also really enjoyed going off on these sort of little rabbit trails of, finding our friends with the haunted house and talking to them and making that part of it and just these different things we've done. And I'm really enjoying that. It kind of keeps it a little more interesting than just the same thing all the time. So we're going to definitely keep that, but we're also going to maybe refine it a bit. I'm thinking bringing in some bonus episodes. I'm thinking starting a Patreon account because it's just so much easier. When I started looking at Patreon versus Buy Me a Coffee, it was like, oh my gosh, what a fool I have been. So we'll keep support up for the Buy Me a Coffee, probably for at least the year, but I am definitely going to be launching a Patreon account. And actually Alex, bless his heart, is already planning our Patreon video because that's what you do. But just the way of distributing bonus content is so much easier on Patreon. It's like it's designed for it. So looking at doing bonus shows, which I will talk about more when the new season drops, but those are going to be fun. One of the things we're going to have with them is we want your ghost stories, and the bonus shows are going to be around ghost stories that we've heard. And then every once in a while, depending on how many we get, I suppose, we're going to have ghost stories you have heard. And we're going to be able to read some of those ghost stories as well. So I'm kind of excited about that as bonus content, and I think that would be really fun to do. It'll be really simple, just straightforward, just you and me hanging out, and you listening to some ghost stories, which I am always up for. So I'm excited about that. And then there's some other things. We're looking at enhancing the community, finding ways, better ways for people to connect. I've got someone doing that already. She's going to be the administrator for it. Thank you, Brianna. And I just think it's going to be really neat. My whole reasoning behind doing this was that we have community, and I just think we can build community in better ways. So look for that. So the season will end around Christmas time. The Christmas episode will be the last one for season 1 of Ghosts and Bears. And much like seasons of your life, things change. Season 2 will kick off probably mid-January. So basically, we're really only going to miss one episode drop. That's going to be the big season break. And then we'll be back at it with season 2. And yeah, I'm excited. Like, oh my goodness. And the ideas people have are amazing. And I'm putting that out to you as the larger audience. Is there something you would like to see, or is there something you would like to get rid of? Hopefully not me. And what can we do that's going to make this even more enjoyable for you? And I just want to open that up. And if you have some suggestions, please shoot them our way. You can get a hold of us a lot of different ways. We're on Facebook as Ghosts, N, letter N, Ghosts, N Bears. The podcast is on Facebook. We are on Instagram, Ghosts N Bears, and that's all one word on Instagram. You can find us that way. And of course, you can always send us a good old-fashioned email, and that is, again, Ghosts N Bears. No apostrophe there, just the letter N, Ghosts N Bears at gmail.com. Send us an email. Love to hear from you. Either send us a ghost story in preparation for the new features we're going to be doing in the new season, or send us a thing and say, you know what, I really hate X, Y, or Z, or I really love this. Can you do more of this? This is what makes me happy. I'm compiling a giant list right now from the 5 or 6 people who I went to. I call them my advisory board, but they're not really. They are, but they're not really. That's not formal. But they're just great sounding boards and great people to give feedback. And I would love to have other suggestions. So please send it on in. I will add it to the list, and let's see what we can make work and make this podcast even better for season 2. If you're not growing, you're just staying the same. And if you're staying the same, you're just going backwards. That's what I think. So we are going to make it even cooler. So thank you, everyone, for all your contributions so far and all your support so far. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited that the show keeps growing. I do want to take that minute and thank all of our current supporters on Buy Me a Coffee. David, Carolyn, Greg, Haunted History, Spandex Guy, Catherine, Penn, Jules, Charlie, Sasquatch Mafia, Michelle, Jordan, Sandy, Kyle, Rebecca, Leslie, Melinda, Brianna, Mari, Steve, Christy, Tori, Sarah, Danny, Tammy, Arwin, Rick and Sue, Carla, Betsy, Michelle, Lauren, Pavakopu, Dixie Koga, Evan, Aaron, and Ginger Manatee. Thank you so much for supporting us with your contributions. Oh, so grateful. Also, I really enjoyed when I was doing the Halloween walks, meeting people who listen to the podcast, like Holly from Nanaimo. Thank you for saying hi and letting me know who you are. Sometimes people tell me afterwards, they're like, oh, I was on your walk, but I didn't want to say anything. No, say something. That's awesome. It's so exciting that you get to hear the podcast and then come down and hang out. I love that. So please do tell me that you like the podcast or you've read one of the books or whatever. It's so great to talk to people like that. I had a little photo shoot with 2 people before, and it was awesome. I was like, wow, this is great. So please do let me know when you come and you get to do that. And yeah, very open to meeting whoever. If you're in town, come say hi. If we're busy, we'll figure something out, but please do come and say hi. Jason is even better at meeting people than I am. I think I mentioned before, if I leave Jason alone anywhere within less than 10 minutes, he's made a new best friend. So that's a great gift to have, and he genuinely loves people, and it just shines out of him. So that's really cool to see. As I said, that new season, lots of cool stuff going on. Oh, I wish I could tell you all of it, but I don't know what we're going to use and what we're not, so I don't want to say anything and then look like a bigger doofus than I usually do. So we'll just keep it at the fact that the show is growing. It's doing really well. We've been helped along by other podcasts. Thank you, Hillbilly Horror Stories. And we've just been helped by you and the community and you recommending us to other people. So thank you for that. Please keep that up. Someone asked, say, oh, I have this podcast. It's a little bit weird. The guy's a weirdo, but it's a great way to stay in touch with everybody and grow that community where people either have had experiences and they need a safe place to talk about them, or they're just fascinated by the paranormal and want to find a place where they can have that kind of conversation with everyone else on the same level, and all kinds of reasons for it. And it's just a great place to do that. So thank you for helping build that. We usually have a little bit of a longer podcast, but I'm not gonna lie, Halloween has kicked my butt, and I'm gonna end it here. But again, thanks so much. Do look for us on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and regular old email. Reach out, say hi. Reach out, send us a story. You've had something weird happen to you. Hey, we want to hear about it, because we are going to start sharing those as well, which is really fun on our bonus episodes. So thanks again for joining us. Have an amazing week, day, work shift, drive, walk home, insert activity here, time away from the children, whatever you're doing. I heard that one this week. She's like, I drop the kids off at school and then I put your podcast on. I'm like, that's awesome. And please, we're still working on that episode where we're going to go to a winery. Oh yeah. So Kat, we will talk more. I told her I would talk to her after Halloween, so I really need to get on that and jump on that and give her a call. But we're going to make that happen. And please, next time you're wandering around and you've got a thought about a place near you, file that one away. We want to hear about it. And we also would love to come and visit you there and interview you and talk about this historical haunted place and what's been going on there. Remember, it doesn't have to be your place. It can be a place that you know of in your neighborhood that's historical, and you know some of the history and you know the ghost stories about it. You get to share that with us. I should have been more clear about that. Someone said that to me. Oh, I wish I lived somewhere haunted and I could have you come. No. It doesn't have to be your place. It can just be a local place that you know of, that you know the history and you know the ghost stories and you want to talk about it. That's all it takes. So please keep that in mind. The next time you're wandering around and you're thinking about it, remember, we're the ones with the actual ghost stories, with the actual history in the actual place. And hopefully one day soon, when we can, that place will be with you. Take care. Bye.